Welcome everyone to this online lecture. This is section 4.1. What we're going to be talking about today is talking about energy and how it is spread throughout organisms, and we're going to talk about producers and consumers. Some of the stuff is going to be a review of what we've covered already this year, so I'm not going to spend as much time on it. But remember, in this chapter, we're going from chapter 18 stuff that talks about population, and changes in population, and now we're going to go back to chapter 4, and we're going to be talking about ecosystems and how ecosystems and energy is used within that population, or even throughout a bunch of populations. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Key questions for today: what are primary producers, and how do consumers obtain energy and nutrients? Vocabulary for today: autotroph, primary producer; photosynthesis, chemosynthesis; heterotroph, and consumer. Okay, so what we're going to be starting out with is primary producers. Primary producers are also called autotrophs, which we've talked about already this year. Autotrophs are organisms that can capture energy from non-living sources and convert it into forms that living things can use. All right, so how do we do this? How do we take stuff that we cannot use ourselves, but these organisms can actually use this energy and convert it into usable energy for life? So they take this energy and store it in ways that make it available to other organisms. So they have processes that they go through in order to convert this energy into food, is what it is. Organisms can do this, are called primary producers. So they produce food, and that's why they're called producers. All life living on this earth depends on primary producers. So there could be a wide variety of different things that are primary producers. One is being plants, so grass. We have fruit trees. We have trees everywhere. We could have algae. So like in water, we could have algae that are primary producers within that ecosystem. And we can have even like, I don't know if this is a marshland or something like that. So marshland obviously produces a lot of energy, converts energy into usable food. All right, so how do we get this energy from the sun? Obviously, the sun is our #1 energy producing, has a lot of energy that it releases. And how do we capture that energy? So the energy that powers most of life on Earth comes from the sunlight. Obviously, we have to capture that energy, and only a few organisms are able to do that. And producers are the people that do that. So algae, plants can harness that solar energy and build living tissues through photosynthesis. We've had a whole chapter on photosynthesis, so I'm not going to go over that in depth, but you can look back at your notes or this chapter 9 videos if you need a review over photosynthesis. But kind of in short terms here, what is photosynthesis? It captures energy from sun and converts carbon dioxide and water. So remember, those are the reactants: carbon dioxide and water. We have to have sunlight, that energy that gets this process going, and it converts it into oxygen and energy-rich carbohydrates to store as sugars. Those sugars are then stored for other organisms to eat and provide energy for those other organisms that we will talk about next. So on land, usually plants are your primary producers that capture energy from the sun. And water, we said algae, and even bacteria can even capture energy from the sun. Okay, so I could not get that video to play right now with the settings I have with this recording. So we'll just have to come back to that at the end of the lecture, and I'll have it posted on my website there for you to watch. All right, so going on from that, we're just talking about producers. Okay, now what we're going to talk about is consumers. Consumers like we've talked about before, are heterotrophs. Heterotrophs cannot harness the energy directly from the environment as primary producers can and have the ability to do. So what must heterotrophs or consumers do? They must acquire energy from other organisms. So this is just like you and me. We have to eat in order to convert that energy that producers use from the sun, and we use that energy they harness to create energy for our body to do different activities and have a normal life as we do now. They typically do this by consuming producers. We can go down the line here. We'll talk about food webs in the next section. But we can go down the line where producers are consumed by, let's say, cattle. Cattle then slaughtered, and we eat cattle, we eat hamburger, and we get energy from that. Ultimately, it comes from the producers, and then us consumers, we consume those to get our energy. Heterotrophs are obviously also called consumers. We cannot create our own food. We can't harness that energy from the sun directly. Okay, so we have a wide variety of consumers, and these are the different types of consumers that we have on this earth. We have carnivores. You might have heard these words before, and you might know these, but here's just an overview of it. Carnivores kill and eat meat. This is like the giant river otter. Otters just eat meat, so that's why they're considered a carnivore. Herbivores only contain nutrients from eating plants, roots, seeds, fruits, anything that is produced by those producers. So this is like cattle, caterpillars, deer. They just eat, and their diet is based off of eating plants. And then the last one we'll talk about is scavengers. Scavengers are animals that consume the carcasses of other animals that have been killed. So they use their resources around them. The animal's killed. They will take that energy. It still has energy in it, even though it's not living. But they take those animals, eat it, and that's how they produce their energy. And they scavenge different animals. Okay, so an example of that is vultures. You probably have seen those on the road before. All right, then last thing that we'll talk about, different types of consumers, is omnivores. Omnivores are animals that eat both plants and animals. This would be considered yourself, humans, both eat plants and animals. Bears, pigs, those all are omnivores. Decomposers is our next consumer. They feed off by chemically breaking down organic matter. So they take what is already present in the atmosphere and surrounding them, and they break down that organic matter. Bacteria do this. Fungi, such as mushrooms. Mushrooms are fungi, and they get their nutrients from decomposing matter around them. And then detrivores. Detrivores are commonly digest detritus, which are small pieces of dead and decaying plant and animal remains. Detrivores actually feed off of this detritus that decomposers create, which is just broken down organic molecules. And they take that and they feed off the nutrients of that dead and decaying plant remains. So like examples of this would be like worms, centipedes, millipedes, all of those different type of organisms. Okay, so that's all the different types of consumers. So what we talked about there was producers and the energy they create and how they pass that on to consumers. That is the overview of this section. What we're going to do next section is actually take this this vocabulary that we're learning now and actually use it within food webs and see how this energy actually moves throughout a whole ecosystem. So that is the lecture for section 1 here of 4.1. Good luck on your mastery quiz. If you have any questions, please let me know. And also a reminder, after you get done with this, you need to go and watch that video over chemosynthesis and photosynthesis and the difference between those.